Welcome to Marketing with Confidence. I'm your host, Marianne Amies. We're going to be talking all things digital and online marketing for business owners and marketing professionals. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by your digital marketing, be sure to listen along and you'll hear tips, interviews and more that will give you the confidence to create marketing you love. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing with Confidence. I'm so excited to be joined today by Raquel, and we are talking about getting clear on what you're selling to drive your results. Thanks for joining me, Raquel.
Thanks for the invitation. I might appreciate it.
No worries. Look, I'd love you to tell everybody about yourself and really how you became passionate about helping purpose-led business owners get more strategic with their marketing.
It's a long and convoluted story, as often these things are. I spent a lot of time in corporate in very male-dominated industries. So, and then when COVID came around, I had the opportunity to do a bit of a reset when I was working from home and realized I was actually really enjoying not dealing with all the toxicity that comes with very masculine work environments. So I started to work with some small business owners, predominantly female ones. Found I really loved the energy there and really enjoyed helping them get strategic marketing insights and plans that they didn't normally have the opportunity to access without, having to pay a six-figure salary. So that all evolved and became a book called Marketing Launchpad, and it's been my mission ever since, basically. So I even actually started writing a completely different book. I thought I'll give people tips and tricks on how to get the most out of their marketing, and went, oh, we've got to go back to the beginning. So that's what we did. So, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fun. I can relate to that. I was in male-dominated very young and very early on in my career. I was in accounting firms and then I was in the motor industry. And especially when you're, I went into full-time work at 19 and did my uni at night. Some of that was, the best and worst experiences of my life.
Definitely.
Beauty and fashion, and you'd think that they would be female dominated. And again, amazing sometimes how challenging some of the female management was as well in that. I think sometimes corporate kind of brings out the worst in women because we try to hold ourselves to this masculine ideal and, we want to look strong and sturdy and not empathetic and not emotional and all these things to kind of match with the men, that we kind of depart from all the things that make us naturally so strong and great.
Yeah, and I think also with COVID, everyone did that rethink, and a lot of women particularly found that there were things that were important to them that they couldn't get in the corporate environment. So, the flexibility or something that gave them meaning, those sorts of things. So that's what I love helping people do. So, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, to get to know a little bit more about you before we dive in, a few quick questions for you. Are you for coffee or for wine?
Wine, definitely.
Especially at the end of days like today, right?
Definitely.
What about reading? Are you a reader and is it for pleasure or is it for development?
I'm an avid reader, so writers often are, and I read for both business and pleasure. So I've read hundreds of business books, but I've also read gazillions of books for pleasure, I suppose. So, definitely always usually have at least 5 books on the go. So.
Oh, I love it. What about a top pick at the moment, something that you've recently read?
Recently, surprisingly, there was a novel called Lessons in Chemistry, which they did the TV series on, and it just came out of the blue for me. I hadn't seen any hype or anything about it and read it and went, oh my God, that's so cool. So that was fun. I liked that a lot.
I adore that book. It was just such a different book, not your typical characters, not your typical plot line. And I actually just saw Bonnie on the weekend at the Sydney Writers' Festival.
Cool.
Yeah, which is really, really cool as well to see her in person and hear her speak. But yes, that is a wonderful recommendation. I used that book to get a friend back into reading who hadn't read for years as well. And she was saying, what's a book that's going to get me back into reading? I was like, oh, I think I know the one.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely gold for that.
What about beach or bush? Where will we find you?
I'm happy with both songs. I don't have to be fully immersed in both, but I picked beach simply because I've got more chance of scuba diving there. So yeah.
Fantastic. And then Instagram or LinkedIn, where do you like to spend your time?
Depends what I'm doing. So Instagram definitely for fun.
Yeah.
LinkedIn probably primarily obviously for work. They're both probably the prevalent platforms for me, but yeah, different times of the day, different outcomes, I suppose.
A bit like
Yeah.
coffee and wine.
A little bit, yes.
Fantastic. Well, look, as I said, I'm really excited to get into it with you. Obviously, a fellow marketer is always, wonderful to talk to because I think we all have such different perspectives and approaches on things as well as similarities. So I love the marketing chats that I get to have as well. So, I mean, you talk about helping people getting more strategic in their marketing. And I think that, you know, obviously there's certain roadblocks for business owners that really drive their success. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts on what they are and what you've seen.
I find a lot of people, particularly small business owners, hate marketing. They loathe, detest, find it revolting, find it uncomfortable. But I find a lot of that is because they're not really clear about what it is they do, who they do it for, and what particular problems and that they're solving. But predominantly, most clients come to me based on their marketing's not working. So what can they do to make it better? And I find that, as I said, that first book that I wrote wasn't actually the one that I published first, because taking people back to that foundational piece, back to that strategy piece where you look at things like exactly who you want to work for, how you want to work with them, what problems you solve for them is really helpful. And then you get much better return on investment for any investment that you make in terms of time or money. The other thing as well is a lot of people don't give themselves permission to actually structure their business in a way that gives them what they need. So women particularly, usually looking for more flexibility, want to work around other obligations or have other things that they want in their life. Their business should be a vehicle for delivering that to them, but usually they just trade a job for a job and they go dollars for hours and that's it. But if you think about your product range really selectively and really strategically, you can actually get your business to work for you so that you can focus on the bits that you want to work on. And that's usually the golden key, I guess, that for people that opens up the potential for them. So even if they're an accountant, for instance, they don't just have to sell accounting services. If they're a life coach, they don't just have to coach live one-on-one. So it's looking at things a little bit differently. And then for me, marketing's that conversation. So marketing's obviously having it at scale, but in my mind, that conversation happens one-to-one. It just happens to be across multiple platforms. And if you've got a really clear idea of who you want to work with and who your ideal client is, and if you have a really clear before and after picture of them before they work with you, and then afterwards, it's a lot easier to tailor that conversation so that you get much better results. And I think we all overcomplicate it because we're all specialists in what we do, right? So you and I both know that there's 5,000 different reasons why an ad campaign might not be working.
Yeah.
But if your messaging's screwed up, then that's the first thing you've got to fix, and then we can go and tweak the rest of it. So it's really that kind of getting them to focus on the right things and getting those systems in place so that then when you do go to market and you're doing your content plan or you're posting on socials, you're doing it to a strategy so it's going to get you better results. And I also find that if you're really clear on that messaging, you feel much more authentic and more confident because you know what you're about. And I suppose it's the difference between meeting somebody and they've got their elevator pitch down pat and they know exactly what they want to do and they're, talking all about it and they've got that confidence and that enthusiasm versus someone going, well, I kind of do this and I kind of do that. And that confidence is attractive and it brings the right people to you. So, and it feels better. So, and I'm all about marketing without any ick, no hard sales. It's all just attraction rather than hunting and gathering.
I love that. A more female approach, let's say.
it is, but it works for the men that love the women too. So
I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I've had my agency for nearly 15 years, and whenever I tell people I hate selling, I'm like, I hate selling. I don't really sell. And they're sort of like, oh, how you must, you must. I don't. And when I think about it, I think I listen. So I listen, and I hear what's going on for somebody. And then I explain the things I know that we can do that can help that. But I don't pitch. I don't say, and it's this, and I'll throw in this for you. And then there's no hard. So what do you think? Are we going to sign it today? There's no hard sell from me. And I think it's built on that, on exactly what you said, sort of knowing what your product service is, listening, actually showing someone a solution rather than, it's kind of like the demonstration of what the outcome will be rather than, the promises. And I mean, I'm sure like me, you get served all the like what we call bro marketing, and it's loud.
And brash and close now. Yes.
And it's, it's scarcity, and it's what you're doing wrong and how I'm going to fix it, and the guarantee and the this and the that. And, I think it's, it comes from a very different place. And I think it lands really differently as well.
Yeah. And I think also the other thing to keep in mind, most professional services people particularly don't remember, is you educate people along the way. If you solve problems for them along the way, they're going to want to work with you when they can afford to at some point anyway. And I find that whole education piece takes the whole revolting feel out of it. It's you're being helpful, you're being of service. And a lot of the time what your zone of genius is, you could teach somebody to do it, absolutely, but you're going to do it better and faster.
Yeah.
And some people are not going to have the time or the energy to want to do it themselves. So they'll want to work with you on any part of that spectrum. So, and I just, I hate we've got a workshop coming up and that you've got this deadline and you've got to make it. And I'm just like, I'm already stressed running my own business.
Yeah.
I'm already overwhelmed about the 20,000 options for marketing technology, for Christ's sakes. I mean, it's just insane. So why would you then add more pressure to somebody when you're actually just trying to take the stress off them in that area?
Yeah.
So,
so true.
There's nicer ways of doing it.
Yeah. So I guess, when we think about, like what you said, business owners don't have time. They're overwhelmed by marketing, that, they don't know what they should be doing. And then when things go wrong, they don't know what's going wrong. What do you see is the biggest opportunities for business owners when their sales and marketing aren't performing?
I think good idea, like the quickest way of doing something like that is getting somebody to do, I call it a marketing health check. So literally small investment, but I go through and have a look at all of the platforms, look at all of the systems they've got in place, and sort of get an idea of what, on a superficial level, on a surface level, what's working and what's not. Because there might be some immediate things like your homepage is all about you and your portfolio as opposed to what problems are you solving for people, or it could be your socials over here are like really against brand or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
We can absolutely deep dive into advertising campaigns and that kind of things. But I find a lot of the time when I'm expecting everything to sort of be all in place and all working strategically together, like all of your platforms need to be working to the same conversion machine, right?
Yeah.
That kind of strategy makes everything a lot easier. So I just find when I've got clients that come and who are completely overwhelmed, just giving them a plan, like literally looking at their business and helping them prioritize what the next 10 items are. Saying that that's what the next 12 weeks looks like, and giving them the focus and the permission, I guess, to just ignore the rest of the clutter. That really, really helps. And it helps make sure that everything they do is going to get the best return. Everything they do is aiming towards the same sort of outcome. So it takes out that scattergun approach and allows you to really deep dive and be really laser focused. And I think that in and of itself just takes away so much of the stress. It's incredible. So I think working to a plan, gold. People wanting to build a marketing plan, always sitting there going, I just don't know where to start. And because I've been doing it for way too long, it's not something that takes me a lot of time, but that's because that's the space I play in, same as you. So it's, I think if you can give somebody that, and just, I think also the reassurance to say that you're focusing on the right things, that you are actually doing something really well. And the other thing as well I've got with a lot of clients is they sit there and they go, but there's so many options, I've got to be on ChatGPT and I've got to be on advertising. And I'm like, rather than try and do everything badly, why don't you focus on one, two, or three key things and do them really well?
100%. Yeah.
And it returns the investment every time. So yeah,
I
it's
could not agree with you more on that. I think you touched on it in a couple of ways, but that amount of clutter and noise and shiny objects, and it's not even just what they see, it's everybody has an opinion. And often they are unqualified, that, you know, that I call it the barbecue effect, you know, on a Monday when a client calls and says, is that a barbecue on the weekend? And my friend's husband works in finance, and he was saying on our Instagram, you know, we don't put links in the captions. And you're just like, number one, like, what does this guy know about Insta? You know, number two, yeah. And I call it the barbecue effect because there's always someone 9 times out of 10 with no expertise telling them another thing they have to be doing. And you know, I was just talking to a accountability buddy before, and we were talking about the amount of business owners that you know, are pivoting to AI solutions, because it's like, oh, I've got to talk about AI. There's opportunity with AI. And then you have all the other people on the other side going, what? I'm not doing anything with AI. What am I missing out on? What's this thing?
Exactly.
I've got to get on board. And it's like, to your point earlier, Rach, it's like, no, you probably should actually have a strategy first before you worry about what ChatGPT can do.
Pick the tools that'll help you get there. But I mean, God, the rabbit hole that you can go down with AI. And I mean, I'm a marketing nerd. I love playing with the new toys, right?
Yeah.
But I do it for a living.
Yes.
So there's no way that a business owner who's in a completely different field is going to have the time or the energy,
correct,
or the expertise, to be honest, to actually make the right call. So
100%. And to your point, it's something I'm big on as well, not doing everything at once. It's like, yes, you know, maybe there's an AI tool out there for you. So why don't you try one, just one, you know, do some stuff with it for a couple of weeks and see, does it improve your life, or is it actually just complexity? That's not it. Try something else. And it's the same with social media. You know, when clients want to be on, oh, I think we need to be on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. It's like, well, right now you're on nothing. So why don't we start with two and, you know, see where your clients are? Because it's also not really about where you want to be. See where your clients are, start there. And then when they're humming, let's add something else in. And I think it's that, yeah, it's kind of like, it's a bit of that FOMO. It's a bit of that shiny object. And I think all the noise of people constantly telling business owners what they should be doing for their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, solutions all work. They all work for a particular type of client in a particular way. But if your foundation's not there, if you're going and buying the best AI tool, but your website doesn't convert, it's no point having the wonderful AI tool because you've got nowhere to transact. So maybe get your basics in place first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, to your point, you wanted to write a book and then realize the book that people actually needed was the one that took them to the foundations, to the very beginning.
Exactly. So.
And I think, you know, obviously you and I, we're mature marketers. We're at the seasoned end of the market. And there's a lot of people that have come up, you know, managing Instagram accounts and now managing strategy. And depending on the amount of development you've put in, you might not actually understand the basics of marketing strategy. You know, being able to succeed on Instagram 5 years ago and build an account really quickly doesn't actually mean you know how to build the strategy and foundations of marketing to market anything.
Exactly. And the flip side of that as well is you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. I've also been, you know, my roles in corporate where I was reporting into CEOs and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So I'm used to having that business focus and that business lens that says there's no point being in business if you're not making money. I'm not saying sell your soul for it, but there's ways of doing marketing that's going to get you the best return on your investment that aren't vanity metrics. So, 100%. And that's what I find a lot of the time with like freelancers that who are a lot younger, or they're doing it as a side gig and that kind of stuff. They're not thinking about what do I get out of my investment? They're thinking about, you've got 1,000 new followers. Isn't that great? And I'm like, how many of them are customers?
Yes. Yeah, correct.
When will they convert to money?
Yes.
So, and it's not all about the money, but, you know, there are ways of, there are so many metrics out there and there's amazing dashboards and they're all full of rubbish a lot of the time when you can't if you can't tell me that all of that activity I've done on Instagram actually has contributed to a sale at some point,
Yeah.
I'm going to start questioning if that's the right channel for you.
Oh, yeah, at 100%. I think that's right. It's not just to make sure you're measuring, but it's to make sure you're measuring the right things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I love the endorphin rush for when you get new customers or you get new subscribers and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure that the rest of the metrics are working and that they are converting at some point when they're ready.
Exactly.
So,
And when people say, what's a good number of followers to have? I always say the total number that will do business with you on any day.
exactly.
Do you want 100,000 followers, but only 5 can do business with you? Or do you want 5,000 followers and, 2,000 can do business with you? Whatever the scenario is, and we've seen that over the years with all the platforms, the people with the biggest followings don't necessarily have the biggest engagement.
No.
Because they're not necessarily their ideal client. They're just followers.
Exactly. And, depending on how you're monetizing those platforms, your metrics are going to be very different from someone else's. So,
yeah, so true. Well, I think, we've talked about where there's opportunity for growth and I guess where people fall over in their building blocks. What about getting clear on what you're selling?
I usually find really good starting place, ask your clients.
Yeah.
Get to know that ideal client and that before and after picture really, really intimately and really, really well. And the best place I've found is literally going and asking my clients or listening to old recordings of discovery calls and that kind of stuff, because you start to see a pattern of the questions that people are asking. And then if you can drop those into, say, your content throughout, your calendar, you're going to actually be educating people so that they're coming to you more and more ready than they might be coming in cold. So I just ask those questions. If you don't have a big client base, ask people that you'd like to work with.
Yeah.
A lot of people are willing to help. If you buy someone coffee and say, can I just pick your brains or whatever it is, most people, if they've got the time, are willing to do it if they know that there's a reason for it and you're not just going to be wasting their time or giving them a hard sell or whatever it is. So I also tend to break it back down to that, the problem that you're solving and how. And also, one good thing to think about at the beginning of the journey, if somebody's just becoming aware of having an issue, you're going to be talking to the symptoms, not the underlying cause. So always try and frame it that way. And I tend to use that product pathway to help educate people through, so that if you're a life coach and somebody's stressed, you know that there's an underlying issue that might be something as obscure as they've got parental issues, whatever it happens to be. But over here, they're stressed.
Yeah.
Give them some tips to help them solve that stress, then dive deeper as you go through your product pathways. So, but listen to your people, listen to your audience and find out exactly the questions they're asking. And that'll help you frame what problems you're solving and how you're going to solve them. So, and that's really, it really is that kind of research. It's the only way I know to get clear on all of that kind of stuff. So I know I was lucky, I suppose, when I was doing the book, I did interviews with past clients or ideal clients, for instance, and that actually gave me the insight to write a different book. Because they were telling me that the problems that they had were not the problems that I thought they had or that they thought they had. So it was, and if you can marry your solutions to that kind of research, then you're going to be a lot more effective and a lot more targeted in who you talk to.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I think coming from that, big business world so long ago, we had that market research budget that a lot of small business owners don't have. And, market research was always great for that, for getting that, this is my perspective, but what is actually my target market's perspective? What do they want? What do they need? And I think you're right. Asking your clients, asking ideal clients, asking in groups. Obviously, you and I are part of One Roof, and that's an amazing community, using communities that you're in to ask questions and get that real feedback. I think is really a really good point that's going to guide even your language. I met with my accountant today and I was telling her about some content that I'm putting out coming forward. And even just talking to her, she was sort of saying to me, my clients, I'm hearing this from my clients. My clients are talking like this. My clients are worried about this. And I said to her, this is such good perspective for me. Your clients are my ideal clients.
Exactly. And
I was
that's
like,
it.
yeah, to hear firsthand, the sentiment of small business owners right now from you actually gives me more knowledge of how to frame things almost completely differently to how I was thinking. And I think you're right. Again, it all comes down to those foundations. Know who you're talking to, know what your, USP or your benefits are, and then kind of have that plan of how you're going to get that content out. But yeah, I think that market research piece at the outset can seem unattainable to small businesses, but I think, yeah, you have to just be a little bit creative to get to it.
Yeah, and I think, like being on One Roof, for instance, literally just put a post in the group and saying, would anyone like to be interviewed for a book? The sheer volume of people that came back was phenomenal because they're so generous.
Yeah.
Even just, putting together a short questionnaire maybe about your area and what their biggest challenges are, and if you leave it fairly open-ended, they can use their own words, and that way you can use their words to help you frame as opposed to tick this box and off you go, because, marketing would be sitting there talking about lead generation, content strategy, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, most clients are like, I don't have enough clients and I don't make enough money.
Yes. Yeah.
So, like, okay, that's a bit different. Okay. But, I can obviously then put that into what I would consider traditional marketing services.
Yeah.
But, and I think everyone's got the opportunity to do that. And I think also networking events, we have drinks with One Roof or coffee catch-ups and that kind of stuff. Talk to people who are in your space or even who are just other business owners and sort of see what their challenges are and see how you might be able to work with them more effectively. So, and I think particularly women, it's quite interesting. A sales guy I used to work with wanted to do market research and he gamified, 100 coffees in 100 days and had to be tick, 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 go, 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 and, grow marketing. But for the sales guy, so really like hyper. And I'm sitting there going, that's my vision of hell. I don't want to do that, but I'm willing to have a coffee with somebody new every week and see how I can help them with their marketing and they can give me information about what their challenges are. And, that's a nice trade. That's a really good approach. And women are generous with that kind of stuff.
I agree.
As long as you don't waste anyone's time. It's doable. And and even if you don't have a big client base, talk to somebody who you'd like to work with.
Yeah. That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much. I think you've given so many nuggets so generously today. I really appreciate that.
And a random rabbit hole here and there.
Where are people best to connect with you, Rachel, and learn more about you?
So obviously I'm on LinkedIn, as we said, all of the time. But for the book and associated stuff, marketinglaunchpad.com.au. But if you're in One Roof, obviously I'm on there as well. So, but I'm around about the traps. But Marketing Launchpad is on all the social platforms, but the website's probably a faster starting point.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was fun.
And to everyone else, I look forward to talking to you again soon. Hey, thanks for listening to another episode. If you don't want to miss one, make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcast app. And if you love it, be sure to share it with friends and colleagues who you think could benefit from increasing their digital marketing confidence. Want more? Head to marianneamies.com to find out how you can work with me directly, to reach out to have me speak at your event, or to grab yourself some free resources.